Hello, hello, hello.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 004. We made it.
We made it.
Great news is this isn't 6 months after the last episode. It's only a couple days, which is great. So I think we're going to do some great things in 2024, maybe.
I think this might be our year.
I think so. I think, a lot of it has to do with maybe less stress on your part. Some decisions have been made in your life.
Yeah, I have decided to follow Jesus.
Yeah, it's about time. You're gonna get you baptized this Sunday.
Absolutely.
It's not what it is, but Jessica has some news on her front, and we're figuring some stuff out. We'll maybe talk about it later towards the end of this episode. So a little bit of Easter egg, a little bit of
clue. I am not pregnant.
Stay tuned. Goodness gracious! Wow, that's a dark humor there, folks. So, anyways, last episode we're fully aware that 2 and 3 are probably identical to each other, but hey, we're working on it, figuring things out. There's a 4-month gap between those, or ish. So we're figuring things out, but there was some information that's probably new in that, and maybe we'll share some more information we've already shared here. And I guarantee we're going to repeat ourselves, so get used to it if you're going to stick around.
There will be parallels because this podcast is our life.
That's true, and we repeat stories, so I'm told.
That too, yeah.
So anyways, purpose of this one is we want to talk more about fostering. We ended the last one giving a little bit of insight into our personal process and how we went through that and what that looks like for us, or what it looked like for us and on getting E, our foster child. And so we just want to talk more about that, of the actual process and what we went through. And so last we talked about was just us getting licensed and how that went. And for us, it was about a 6-month process from December of 2020 to May, June of 2021. And then we actually got our certificate in July. July 5th is when we were official. And then we got a call on August 11th. That there was a little boy that needed a home, and that's E, and we've had him ever since, and he's now 2.5 years old. And
apparently hugging and kissing girls at school. He has a girlfriend.
That's a new development.
I'm like, what?
What? So he watches Bluey, and by the way, I'm Justin.
And I'm Jessica.
And we're going to get the hang of introducing ourselves at the top of this podcast, because this is Genuinity, the podcast. Welcome. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Tell a friend. Maybe we'll do intros eventually once we start having guests, and that'll take care of that. But for now, we're figuring stuff out, and we just jump straight into talking. But anyways, our kid, 2 stories here. 1, 2-year-old kid kissing, maybe not kissing, but definitely hugging. And
he definitely said he kissed.
I don't know if that was a joke. He's 2.5, and he's got comedic timing. I'm proud and scared all at the same time. But he also watches Bluey, and if you're familiar with Bluey, the TV show and the character, she says "what" a lot whenever something is exciting to her or whatever, and he does that a lot. And so you might hear us say "what," not Little John, but Bluey and E, as who we're referencing. So yeah, it's been crazy, and we'll catch all up on what's happened in the last 6 months. But let's close this fostering loop and give you the insides and just some background of that. That way, if you're thinking about it, maybe we can just give you our story, and then we can stop talking about our fostering story.
I would even say that if you're thinking about it and you know us, talk to us. We're willing to talk to you. I feel like people poured into us.
Just know the phone call will be recorded, and we're going to post it on Genuine.
People poured into us, and we are willing to pour into other people because it is a just cause. And like we said, we do not have the heart for fostering, but there are people out there that truly do, that can do it over and over and over again. And you guys have the heart of Jesus, because it's hard. It's really, really hard to love a child that may or may not become yours. So anyway, moving on. Justin, where are we picking up?
Well, we did have to go through a lot of trainings. That's kind of where we left off with episode 3. The process, like I said, it took 6 months. it had a lot of like digging into our personal life, finances, emotional health, physical health. We have to do physicals every month. The house had to get inspected. The house had to get inspected not only by just somebody coming through and seeing if it was safe, we had enough room for a child, but also fire inspections.
Can I say something about the house getting inspected? So our house is fairly new. Like it was built very recently, and there were still things that were needed to get it approved for fostering. So when I say the process is grueling, it is very, very grueling. There are a lot of things that you have to keep like in code, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like
It's in code.
keep in code for foster care.
And yeah, and it's dumb stuff. And it, honestly, I don't think it was anything that our house needed. I think it was stuff that we had to do, like dumb stuff, like, alcohol needs to be out of reach. And I get it, because you can be open for any age, but we were open for 0 to 2. And so we're like, okay, granted, now having a 2-year-old, totally understand why, because he grabs things off the counter all the time. I mean, we finally had to get like a freezer lock, because homie was digging in the freezer, pulling out, popsicles on his second birthday.
Looking for waffles.
Yeah, looking for waffles in the morning. And so we totally get it, but it's just, we weren't prepared for it. And so it's kind of, I think, as most parents would say, is that it's a learning process as you go along. And for us, it was, you need to be the best prepared before we even put a child in your home. And that, I think, is the kind of frustrating and overwhelming part, because it's like most parents get to figure that stuff out on their own. And for us, we like to joke and say we're professional parents, not because we're awesome at it, but we're professional in the sense we get paid to do it. Right? Not a lot of parents say they get paid to be parents.
If you're being paid, it's a profession.
It's literally,
yeah, literally. Isn't that how sports work? Like in college,
just
like
anything.
If you are paid, then you're considered a professional.
Yeah, that's with anything. If you're paid to do it, you're a professional. And so, so we like to joke that we're professional parents, but just like anything, parenting in the essence of it is trial and error. But all of the other back stuff of like, having to be trained for CPR and trained at choking and trained what to do if they run away and trained.
So how to disarm a child. Like,
there's a holding. We have a holding.
There's a hold that they teach you, which is insane but again, this is training is for 0 to 18-year-olds. So I can understand it if you're fostering older children and they're violent, or, they're runaways, et cetera, et cetera. But with a 2-year-old, you don't really see that. And honestly, the amount of training hours and trainings that they make us take, like we are so unprepared. We were unprepared. Even with all the training, we were still unprepared for a newborn in every way. Like the day he showed up, we were too scared to put him in the crib, because everyone said, you don't put a newborn in a crib. Newborns cannot sleep in a crib. They have to sleep in a bassinet. So homie slept on a pallet in our bed. And then Justin...
He's the only one that slept that night.
Yeah. And then Justin's coworkers allowed us to borrow a lot of their newborn gear, because apparently...
Shout out to the Duncans, who probably don't even listen to this podcast, but if you do,
you have to have newborn gear for newborns. So when I say these trainings don't really teach you anything, they really don't.
It's not that they don't teach you anything, it's that they teach you so much.
But not about newborns. Not like
it has to cover. It has to cover
or...
everything. It's like what is the saying? A jack of all trades is master of none, but better to know some than none. And so it's kind of that, right? It's like we're not a master at any of it, but they just covered so much.
But none of it really pertaining to newborn.
I mean, there's some, but like I said, some, but not everything. That's what I mean. We're not a masters in any part of it, but we just have information on all of it all at once. And it was just, you forget stuff.
That's true.
We knew more. I say we've forgotten more than they taught us. And that's just because there's so much information of it. And that didn't make sense, but you'll know what I was trying to say. And so literally everything you can think of, like pharmaceutical drug use, not drug use, but pharmaceutical drugs, sexual abuse,
interracial,
Yeah,
Yeah,
just interracial,
interracial
like having a
children.
couple
Yeah.
that's of a different race than you are, how to deal with that. We had to go
Um,
through sensitivity courses. We had to go through, and we still do. Like every year, those classes expire, and then we have to take new ones. And
my favorite is milk and cookies.
well,
Talk
that wasn't
about
a
milk.
class.
Talk about milk and cookies.
So throughout the process, there's directors, right? Through our agency, which is DePelchin. Shout out to them, and thanks so much for everything. We'll say that, they've been good to us, and we've had like 3 different agents through this process because of just life. And yeah, it's essentially milk and cookies just is a method of communicating specifically with foster kids, but I think with any kids is what this was in regards to. One of the directors who teaches the courses has his own kids, and we're saying that's what he does in his personal life with his family. Is whenever there's something going on that he can tell, he's created a method, a situation where he's like, all right, let's have some milk and cookies. And so he puts out milk and cookies, and they sit and eat milk and cookies, and he asks them questions about what's going on. And it's a psychological method that's been used specifically with men and boys. They say that, women and girls can sit in a chair or whatever, on a couch, and look at each other and communicate openly and have no problem. But men have difficulty doing that. So if you want to communicate with a guy, or, a father wants to communicate with their son, or whatever, to do something like work on a car, play catch, throw a ball around, do something together, put together a puzzle, whatever it is, do something together so it uses part of your brain and kind of drops the defenses. And then, and another way of kind of, I don't know if your shit sandwich is kind of another thing where it's like, you have your positive, bad, and then a positive, right? And so it's kind of that thing of like
they
cookies
talked about that too, but they didn't call it a shit sandwich. They called it something else.
Yeah, but it's like doing something
It's
positive while talking about something negative, and then you cap it off with something positive. And that way, communicating about negative things or communicating about difficult things isn't difficult, and it's not something that is emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we talked about that, and just everything, like even stuff like you wouldn't think about until you're in it. Like, how long should you shower with your kid? Like, at what age is it appropriate to not shower with your kid anymore? And there's not a specific age. It just depends on when that kid, like, when is it okay and when is it not okay? And like all of those things, like there's just things we didn't think about, and probably things that have helped us as we grow with E and move with E. And so it's just a lot of things. So we got a lot of that training. And then there's just
And
stuff.
I will preface the shower thing with saying, before we were parents, we are like, why would you shower with your kid? Like, that's kind of weird. But now that we're parents and we realize that you have
hop in the shower, let's
zero
rub you down,
time,
and
we're
get
like,
out.
get in the shower. Like, we're taking a shower together. It's dinner time.
And to answer your question, is when is it time to stop showering with your kids? It's whenever they start playing with body parts. That's when it's like, okay,
That's not. They said when they start identifying body parts.
No, they can identify body parts. That's fine. But he came into context because his wife was showering with the kid, and the kid flipped a boob and was like,
oh yeah, you're right.
And so it's like, that's when it's like, or you just have those conversations, whatever it is, you know what, you do you. But we're just saying that's what we went through, and that's what we were told. And so
we are not professionals.
We are not. We are professionals. We're just not experts.
We're not certified in child psychology.
No, we're not. Anyways, so we went through that, and part of it was the psychological portion of it. And it was funny because they also dig into your driving record, and I had like 3 or 4 speeding tickets, and
shocker.
They literally told me like, hey, like, no, like no more of that. Like, if you get a speeding ticket with a foster kid, like, that's no bueno.
No speed racing with the baby in the back.
So now I just don't get caught. And and so, that's even part of it. And then, I struggle with anxiety and depression, and there's a lot of different things that I do to try and work through those. And one of the things that they were very adamant about is like, hey, if you start having anxiety attacks, and because at the time I wasn't seeking therapy, and like, if you start having anxiety attacks again, and you need to go see a therapist. Like, are we agreed on that? I'm like, yes, I will, blah, 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 blah. Like thinking I'm, whatever. Well, lo and behold, started having anxiety attacks again. And so I started seeing a therapist again to help me through that. And so they are, to say that, they are very in depth on who they pick and how they pick. But then
It's
on the
like a
same coin,
board. A board has to like approve you. There's like a board of like,
yeah,
I don't know how many people and like so many votes have to go
you have
through.
to put a PDF together of your home and pictures of your
Yeah,
house
you
and
kind
of
of have
your
to like sell
family. And
yourself like a
no,
book.
literally,
It's kind
yeah.
of like that page that we were talking about for the
It's like a
adoption.
one-sheeter.
Yeah, but this is kind of the same thing for foster care. So that plus all the trainings and all the certificates and all the financials, and then also a psych eval, health eval. Like if you have it, they literally checked it. Anything and everything.
Gotcha. So, yeah, and that's literally how they told us too. Like, hey, we're going to present you to a board and we want to put the best foot forward. So, they want your finances, they want your W-2s, like literally your W-2s and your tax returns and all of that. They want everything. And I get it. And we're thinking, and as much as we complain about it and as much as we joke about it and criticize, you have to look at it from the perspective of, and every time I talk about this, I get emotional. I don't even know why I'm getting emotional about it, but you have to look at it from the perspective of the agency. We look at it from the perspective of our agency because it's difficult, again, with CPS. It's hard to not criticize CPS because it is a government entity, and we all know that government struggles in all aspects, and so they're doing what they can. And once you're inside of it, you can critique it more and more, but also understand the vastness of it, of the problem, of the issue, of the solutions, all of that. It's difficult. But look at it from a child's perspective that's been pulled out of a home for a number of reasons, been removed, ripped, torn, however you want to look at it, from their parents. And if they're just willy-nilly being put into an environment that has not been tested and has not been tried and has not been investigated, then potential for wrongdoing to happen again goes up. And so we get that. And I think that's the difference between, and I think that's why almost CPS doesn't do it anymore. CPS used to license people on their own, and now they don't. You have to go through a fostering agency.
They outsource it to
And so
agencies.
There's different agencies and wherever you live, and ours works in Texas, I think, for the most part, Austin, Dallas, Houston, and they are very in depth on who they license, because at the end of the day, DePelchin is responsible for their foster parents and their foster families. And so that's why we have DePelchin agents, we have CPS agents, we had state agents, meaning his attorney. Like, he has an attorney, we don't have an attorney. He had CASA workers,
They're like volunteers
CASA
that
ad litem.
essentially advocate for him. So
he had advocates.
they
not
see
agents.
him in his foster home life, and they also go on visits with the parents and those sorts of things. And so they are able to then testify to the court about their environment. They also, like, for example, E is in daycare, so they would go visit him at daycare and see how he would interact with the children at school and that environment. And so they're able to testify to the court on how the well-being of the child and what they get to give. So the ad litem, which is, so typically the way that works is there's a CASA worker, like somebody who actually works for CASA, and then the volunteer. So the volunteer just kind of keeps up with the interacting of the child, but the ad litem actually testifies based on what the volunteer tells them in court and gives a recommendation to the court of what they think, what they believe, whether the parent is doing better, worse, etc., etc. So anyway,
and it's been great because you have people that are on your side. Like, when you're a good foster parent and they knew from the beginning, like, and we've talked about that, like, always be honest with everybody and on your team, was that we wanted to adopt E from the very beginning. Like, if it becomes available, we want to adopt him. And so they did everything they could to make that known and to let the court know, hey, this is a healthy home. They love him. He has no wants. No needs. He definitely has wants. He needs for nothing. And we approve of this home, like throughout the entire process and throughout the potential of him going back to his bio mom.
And I think there was a time there where they were supportive of, because ultimately fostering, their main goal is reunification. Like, they don't like pulling kids from their families. They want their families to rehabilitate, and they want to reunify them, whether that's with the actual abusers or negligent parents or with family members within their own family, so that they're not pulling kids from home. He did not have that. He did not have the outer family ring. So his mom, and to this day, his mom wants him back, but she struggles with addiction. And so the CASA people were very open-minded to, okay, addiction is a disease and it's normal for people to relapse. But with this case, she never stopped using, so she wasn't necessarily trying, but they did give her like the benefit of the doubt. So they really are there for the best interest in of the child, and ultimate plan in all fostering cases is reunification. And outside adoption is usually last resort. So they really, really tried to work with mom, get her on board. And then at one point, I guess they just realized that it wasn't going to happen. But we also had a really good relationship with them as well, because they understood where we were coming from and our heart and what we wanted out of all of it.
Yeah, and it's nice whenever, like, through this entire process, the only person that is an agent for us is the DePelchin agent. Like, that was the only person that was quote unquote for us, meaning they licensed us. They were there to make sure that we were taking care of Elijah, but like everybody else was Elijah's. Like, they were there for the best case scenario for him, and DePelchin was there kind of for both. And so we only had really one person to kind of champion for us. But when you have a team of people that see the relationship you've built, knowing that you're wanting to move forward or towards adoption, that totally helped. And again, every single case is different, and every situation is different and so nuanced. And we knew that going in, but still we ran into things that were abnormal and things that weren't the typical situation. And we've been told that throughout this entire process. Like, right now we're in the middle of this podcast and we're texting his attorney because new information is kind of popping up, and she's not apologizing, but she's just kind of saying, like, I appreciate y'all's willingness to be so fluid, because this is been a roller coaster of hurry up and wait. And that's like every step of the process for us has been like a hurry up and wait. Even getting licensed is like, hey, congratulations, you're licensed. Now just wait.
Yeah.
And it's like, we hurried and rushed, and it's like, well, we want, because people, it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on how fast you want to do it. Well, we wanted a kid, so we did it as fast as we could. And then you get licensed, and then you're like, okay. And they tell you, like, hey,
patiently waiting.
Yeah, pump the brakes. And so we not forgot about it, but we kind of like, okay, then we'll just do us, which is the best thing to do. Like, live life and everything will figure itself out, literally, and then also philosophically and spiritually. We had to rely on God through that, and knowing, like, okay, there's a reason Jessica's gone through her sickness. There's a reason, maybe not a reason, but God has been with us through all of this. And we know that ultimately whatever happened is going to be for the glory of God, and if we continue to trust in him, then he will take care of us, whatever that means. And that's, for me, I struggle with that because so many times, man, we've been told everything in the book from a spiritual standpoint. And like, we've straight up had people tell us, like, if you want Jessica's uterus to grow back, you have to pray. And I'm, huh? So you don't think we prayed throughout the tumor growing and through the surgery and all that? And we're literally straight face told, well, then you must not have prayed hard enough,
or you weren't like faithful enough,
right? Yeah. And it's like, yo, Christians can be crazy,
they can be mean,
and even like and new and this was a new Christian, and we understand that
whenever you first walk in faith, a lot of awesome things happen and you see a lot of unbelievable things happen. And not to say they don't as you become a more mature Christian, but you'd realize not to say that to somebody,
Yeah.
because yes, miracles do happen
and we do
God
believe
God
in
is
them.
capable of anything and everything, but it's not just because you did this, then this will happen.
It's not an act.
It's not, and we've had
Works,
friends
acts,
who
what is it? Works for acts, acts for works.
it's acts for miracles or works
Acts-
for good.
Yeah, there we go.
Good, works for blessings. And we've had friends who've lost a sibling and they spent months, praying that he would be healed, and it didn't happen. And they are one of the most faithful families that we know. And so I think there's room for that, but there's also all of that to say is that a lot of people say things like, hey man, God doesn't give you more than what you can handle. And I was thinking about the other day because I was listening to another podcast where that was brought up, and it's not scripture driven, it's God.
I think he gives you more than you can handle.
100%.
So that he can show up in the mess and be like,
100%.
dude, I got this.
Yeah,
and you can't handle it. And that's why you need me, because ultimately it's all for my glory.
We need to phrase it as God doesn't give you anything more than what you can handle with him.
Or what he can handle.
Like you
Probably
can,
the
yes,
better way of
you can
saying it.
handle anything with God.
Ooh.
But if you don't have that relationship with him and you're not passing things over onto him, as he says, bring your burdens, rest them at my feet, then yeah, you're going to struggle with stuff, and it's
Yeah.
going to be hard, and it's going to feel aimless, which, by the way, I did. I went through the struggles and the aimlessness and the frustrations and the anger and the bitterness and all of that. But you have to kind of fall back and say, even if you don't believe, even if you're not a Christian, you have to fall back and say, you know what, me worrying, me stressing, me having all of this anxiety isn't going to change anything. What's going to change is me saying, as broken as the system is, let the system do what it's going to need to do, as much as we want to try and control the fact that, hey, this woman had a child, was pregnant, decided to use cocaine while pregnant, towards the end of her pregnancy, which means she was probably using throughout the pregnancy. He was born with cocaine in his urine. She had cocaine in her urine during pregnancy. So they test that at birth. And then he was taken away, and she was told, if you use, like, the only way to get him back is to stop using. And you're going to have to go seek counseling. You're going to have to go seek parenting classes. You're going to have to go through these organizations and do all of these things. Mind you, the state is paying for all of this stuff. You have to have a full-time job. You have to have, a good place to live, all of these things. And the state's going to pay for everything that you're required as far as courses to take. You just have to stay clean. And she couldn't do it. And she's done everything else but stay clean, which is really hard, because you see a mother that for whatever reason wants her child back in her life, but also a person that has had previous run-ins with CPS and with previous childs, to the point of one passing away due to neglect. And so it's like, okay. And so it's hard for us, because it's like we felt like we were ripping a child away from somebody that wants him, but we also have to look at it from the system's perspective, from even God's perspective. And it's like, we're going to be confident and knowing that if this kid is meant to be with us, then he's going to be with us. And that's really hard for somebody like me to say, okay, I'm going to trust that, and I'm going to love him with all of my heart, knowing that at any point he can be taken away.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I do know, but also, like, for you, like, how difficult was that for you to be like, yo, I have no qualms with giving this kid my full heart?
I think at first, so like when they first dropped him off, he was never intended to be a long-term stay. So I think from the beginning, we both had very closed off hearts, or at least I did. And then obviously he's a baby, and they're cute and they're funny and they do things, and you're literally caring for this little throw up, pooping, peeing little child. And it's just like a puppy. Like they grow on you, and you love them, and then they start talking, and then they're cuter. And even though they do terrible things, they can now apologize for those terrible things and make up for them. So, I mean, I think that it was at the beginning a little bit harder for me to open up my heart, and also because I had a guarded heart. But now, even before we knew that, it was still kind of unknown if the Supreme Court was going to rule or not.
That's like jumping
Oh, sorry. Well, before we knew, like we were
where
still
we are.
in the unknown. I don't I think the way I live, I'm not Justin. I don't foresee the negative. I try to live in the present
We had this
because
conversation at lunch earlier where I think people's
hold on,
view
let
of
me
me. No, I know,
finish.
but I'm just saying. I think people have this viewpoint of me is that I only see the negative things.
I don't see ahead. Like maybe it's a negative, but I don't see the future. I live in the now because in my mind, I could be dead tomorrow and none of it could matter. So I try not to give myself anxiety, even though there is anxiety there. But with Elijah, I think from the very beginning, it was just like, I'm just going to live life like he's my kid. And then whatever happens, happens. And I'm fully trusting God to protect my heart in whatever capacity that is. And going back to like the whole grief and everything, I know Justin was talking about like with God, you need everything, but also with community, like we have some of the best people that have just supported us through this process, that have counseled us through this process, that have spoken life into us through this process, that have financially contributed through this process in different ways. Like it's just with building out our upstairs office so that Elijah would have a room downstairs with diapers and wipes and clothes and baby bottles and formula and creams and all sorts of things people have dropped off. And it was overwhelming at first to see God's people just move in so many different ways. And so it's also affirming. It's like when you're sitting in this unknown season of like, I don't know if this is what we should be doing, and then you just see God's, like, I'm getting emotional, community like come around us and just fully support what we're doing and just love on this child like unapologetically and without reservation. It's just, I mean, this kid he's special to us, but I genuinely believe that he is meant to be with us for a reason. I don't know what that reason is yet. And he might grow up to be a delinquent. Jury's still out on that. I don't know. He's always fighting in school. But I genuinely believe that he was put in our home for a purpose and God has bigger plans for him. And we are just a catalyst in the hands and feet of that. And he's just a light. He's a light to the people he's around. He's a light to the community that's around us, and he's just a joy. He brings joy, so much joy to our family. And sorry that I went off on that tangent, but yes, I think with as far as how I felt, it was a slow process. It was a slow process of opening my heart slowly but surely, and now it's fully invested. So I can't imagine our lives without him, and I hope that that never happens.
It's easy now to look back on it and say like, yeah, there's no way I would trade this for anything. And just like any parent would say that. And I think for me, it was just really difficult to get over my fear of potentially losing him. And that will always be a struggle until we fully have him. And so to kind of wrap everything up as far as the fostering process and all of that goes, like we got licensed and we got him, and man, that first 6 months, first year was a whirlwind. It wasn't until the year mark where we were told like, hey, mom's not getting him back. Like right up until literally he was 1 year old, we talked about this, there was a chance that he was going back to her. And we now know that like he's not going back to her. And that's kind of what happened was like, hey, mom's still using and it's just she's not doing what she needs to do. And then it went from there to, after, and like I said before, every year we have to continually do the classes throughout the year.
I think it's like 30 hours. like
Yeah.
each so
person,
30 hours each.
And then the people that watch him, which are my in-laws, Jessica's parents, they have to stay licensed as well.
And they have been troopers because
Well, I think even for them, I think this was a learning process for them. And then it was something where it's like, I will say kudos to them and even Jessica's grandparents that when they first met him, he's been treated as our kid since the beginning. And there's, for better or worse, my family is my family, and we are very matter-of-fact people. And I think there is some in my family where it's like, he's not yours until he's yours. And I don't know if that's because they're guarded like I am. And then there's some people that's like, that cry whenever they hear the newest update, because they're excited for us and they're happy for us. And so we get a little bit of everything from my side, and that's okay, because everybody you have to give people this space to accept things at their own pace, just like I had to accept him at my own pace. And it's been rough. And so we found out in August of 2022 that she wasn't going to get him back, and that he was probably going to stay with us. And then that case got, the actual trial to terminate her rights got pushed back, rescheduled until May of 2023. And so mind you, at that point, he's, 1.5, more than 1.5. And then where they typically tell you from baby being removed, placed with a foster parent, and getting adopted, 18 months. That's the timeline. And here we are at 20 months, and they're just now terminating her rights. And so then after the termination of her rights comes the appeal process, which we were like, what? Like she gets to appeal this now? Which I get. Okay, everybody gets their due process.
And we have to talk about the fact that everything is paid for. So between the drug classes, the domestic violence classes, the therapy sessions, the psych evals, the drug testing that was happening every single day, literally anything and everything that they made her do, they paid for, the state paid for. And also the attorney that was provided for her was paid for. So the ad litem that was provided for her. So we're thinking for sure, if you want to appeal this, you're going to have to pay for your own attorney. And nope, they also provided her an appellate attorney.
Yeah, and it's like, cool. So let's wait for this. How long is this process going to take? 6 months. 6 months for the appeal process. We're like,
so we're back
cool,
in the waiting.
Great, back to hurry up and wait. And again, like I said, he's 20 months. We're 20 months into this situation. It's another 6 months. Cool, we can do that. He'll be adopted by the end of 2023. We got this. Well, we go a few months in to the summertime. Oh, wait, they filed an extension because they haven't, sent in their briefing yet. Okay, they sent in their briefing, but then the appellate attorney or, the state, whatever, didn't do their due diligence. And so the judge asked for them to redo it. And we get it. There's a process and there's a reasoning for everything, but it's just so frustrating whenever you're hurry up and waiting. And so then we get to his second birthday. So now we're 24 months into this, and we still don't have an idea of where this appeal case is. And then come November, we find out, hey, guess what? The appeal has been denied or rejected. The appeal is great. And we're like, awesome, great. So that means we can move forward with the adoption. No. Let's celebrate this. This is a win. Good job. Y'all are awesome foster parents. But no. She now has the ability to essentially present it to a larger group of judges or go to the Supreme Court, which we're still not sure if that's the Texas Supreme Court. We think it's the Texas Supreme Court.
I mean, I think that's the only Supreme Court.
Well, there's the federal Supreme Court, but I think this would obviously be Texas Supreme Court. So
yeah, I think federal gets involved in
now. And so she has that option. And we're like, there's no way she's going to do Supreme Court. And there's no way she's going to pay to have this go to Supreme Court. Well, then we find out that also is paid for her if she wants to appeal at that level. And so we're like, great. And then we find out she does want to file for the Supreme Court.
But at this point, her attorney is literally
we haven't got there. We were told, hey, she's filing for the Supreme Court. And we're like, awesome. So now how long? We don't know. We just have to wait for them to apply She wants to. We know she wants to. We have to wait for her to actually. She has.
File.
I think she has. I forgot how long they gave her.
She
it
had
was
she had
2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks.
It was 2 weeks from the appellate decision. So
So this puts us into
appeal-
December.
yeah, the appeal didn't go through, and she had 30 days to file something called an en blanc, where it's essentially in the appeal court.
14 days for en blanc, 30 days for Supreme Court.
So the appeal court, there's like a panel of judges, and only 2 judges rule on the initial appeal. If you want to file an en blanc, that means it goes back to the appeal
Appellate court.
board, the appellate court, but there's a board now, so it's
all
all
of
the
them.
judges, and you're essentially saying that I was right, like I had just cause for this, and it was wrongfully like decided that my rights were
And
terminated.
Here's the even kicker.
Hold
The kicker is that if the appellate court decides to take it on, then that opens the case back up again, and it goes back to the same judge
that ruled on it
terminated the rights to
first
begin
time.
with. So it's like, and we've been told that if that happens, typically that judge says, "I said what I said, and I'm done."
Well,
So it's like it just seems like all a big waste of time.
Typically when it goes to the appellate court and they find a wrong, it's usually in they're filing. So they're essentially saying like, for example, in E's case, his mom's illegal. So I think the appeal that they went with was this mom was taken advantage by the U.S.
Right.
Anyway.
Because of her race.
Yeah. And so I think that's the route that they went. And that obviously was not the case. The baby was taken away because of drug use and potential harm and negligence. And then that was the en blanc, where it goes back to the appellate court. And then the other move that she had was to file with the Supreme Court. She had 30 days to do that. Well, her attorney that had filed the initial appeal is also her attorney that files the Supreme Court appeal. And he waited till like literally the day. No, I think that's when they had the extension, right? Or was this?
No, it's just
he waited till the very, very end to do it. So it took.
You asked me a question. I started to answer, and then you interrupted me.
I'm sorry.
Why you gonna ask me a question and then interrupt me? It make no sense.
Okay.
He didn't wait. It was he didn't want to. He told her that you have no merit in your appeal. Like there's no merit in this case. And so and he fired her. And
he asked for
he has to be removed.
counsel
He has to be removed
appointed to her
right.
because he didn't think she had a case.
And so what happens in that scenario when an appellate attorney decides to be removed from a case and the client wants to continue the process, that attorney is bound to, and we could be completely wrong on all this. This is just what we've been told and what we're seeing, is that attorney then has to file something that's called an Anders brief, essentially stating, hey, I don't find merit in this case. I would like to be removed, but the client wants to continue moving forward with the appeal. And that's where we were at the end of, in December, mid-December, filing Anders brief. And we're like, great, awesome. And then we really found out what that means, which is essentially it's still an appeal to the Supreme Court. We're like, great. And then we found out about 2 weeks ago, or was it a week ago? 2 weeks ago, that we got a message from
right before New Year's.
I could look at my phone and tell you.
I want to
exactly
say it
when
was
we got
it was right before New Year's, I think.
We got a message on December 16th.
Oh, wow. We were both wrong.
Hold on. That the petition for review was denied by the Supreme Court on that previous Friday.
So that's what we were waiting for.
That's what we were waiting for. So that was December 16th. We got that. So that was 4 weeks ago, almost a month ago, I guess. Today's the 12th of January. And so then, we had already got an attorney and all that. And then we found out we had to wait for this review, and then that got denied. And so now we're waiting for that denial to be certified. And that's what we were talking to our attorney right now about, was that now we have to wait for it to actually go back to the court to be certified. And that can take 60 days. And then
it has to go to the adoption court. So it goes back to the appellate court, and then it goes to the adoption court.
Well, it just has to be, it goes to the adoption court for us to start our process, which is good. But it's 60 days for them just to certify the Supreme Court rejection, and then our adoption attorney can file. But then we also have to get his redacted. There's just a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And so essentially, yes, great, happy that we're moving forward. But again, it's back to hurry up and wait. Now we're waiting on bureaucratic stuff. We're waiting on files. We're waiting on his birth certificate. We're waiting on all of that. We're waiting on our subsidy negotiation paperwork. And so part of what we say we're professionals is because we get paid a monthly stipend to take care of the kid. And thankfully, we're at a place financially where we don't have to really worry about that. And so we've even said, like, it's kind of weird doing, subsidy stuff. And they're like, no, it's for him. Like, you have to look at it, everything through the lens of the kid. And so that means he potentially will get in-state tuition, and he'll have secondary insurance, and we'll get some kind of form of funding.
Too, and he has a little trust fund.
Homie's got more money than we do. And so it's cool to know that they take care of them in some regard. And that's because I think he's been in the foster care system past the age of 2.
Oh, it's 2 years. So if you're in the foster system for 2 years or more,
I think we've gone back and forth on that.
It's
not more than 2 years. It's 2 years old and up.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong, but either way, he meets both criterion. And so this is where we are in the fostering process. We're,
still on the fence about that.
Right? And so we'll try to keep all updated with how that's going. We haven't really told a lot of people in our community. So, hey, if you want to know what's going on with Elijah,
to reveal it,
you better listen to Genuinity, the podcast, if you want the most updated news. Because it's awesome that there's so many people that care about him, but there are so many people that care about him. And we're having to repeat this story over and over again. And I'm not a fake person.
It changes.
And you're interrupting me again.
I'm sorry. It changes so much. Like, his narrative changes on the fly
every week,
all the time. So it's really hard. We try not to tell anybody, because then we're having to, like, oh wait, no, that was inaccurate information. This is actually what's happening now. So we really don't, to be fair, we don't really update anybody except maybe my parents.
We update people when they ask us.
That too, yeah.
Because it's just easier that way. And so a lot of people are probably living in this like limbo, which is where we are. So welcome, join the club. But yeah, so I have a problem with, I was talking to our pastor the other day. It was like, because he was really excited about it because he just learned about it this week. And I was like, that it is good, but also like, bro, it's so hard to put on this like happy, cheerful face every time we tell the story, because people get really excited, and it's hard for me to act excited over and over and over again, because it's like you're almost tempering other people's emotions because they want you to be happy with them. Yeah. And then when you're not showing a happy face, they're like, what's wrong? And it's like, well, nothing's wrong. It's just, we're just in a limbo phase. And then you have to explain yes, 100%. It's easier for me to smile and say, we're so excited, and just move on. But it gets,
you have to be like a duck in this process. You just kind of have to let everything roll off and not really get your emotions involved. Otherwise, you'll live in constant anxiety.
And if you go deeper, and that is 100% what it looks like, a duck is floating on the water and looks all peaceful and serene. But if you look underneath that water, they're treading. And so that's kind of what the fostering process is that on its base, you looks like you just take a kid, you take care of a kid, and then you give a kid back or you adopt a kid. But there's so much going on underneath the surface, and it's just best not to look.
There's paperwork, there's meetings. So you have, like, for example, we had monthly visits. That was with CPS worker, with DePelchin worker.
Technically, we still have that.
Yes. With the ad litem that would come monthly, with the attorney that comes like quarterly. No, they come every time there's a court date scheduled. The attorney has to come. So there are a lot of visits. There are a lot of paperwork. You have to keep your vehicles up to date. You have to keep your shots up. We had to take a TB test. I never had a TB test in my life, but we had to do it. He started seeing a dentist at like 3 months old. The kid didn't even have teeth, but he was in the dentist chair.
He loves to brush his teeth, though, so that's good news.
So when I say there's a ton of paperwork, a ton of processes, which...
But then there's good stuff, too. Like, he had to have tubes put in his ears. That's covered.
Yeah.
And we have friends that had to do it, and it was thousands of dollars. So
he has the best insurance coverage that
there's part of us that's
you can have.
Because we found, he had RAD, and he had the ear situation, and all those things are, medications being taken. We found out that his albuterol his pumps $70 a pop, and we're just getting them
Yeah, because he's on Medicaid.
so, and
And
so it has its good and it has
And he
its
was
bad.
hot. So we haven't even talked about this. When he was about 9 months old, he caught a upper respiratory infection, and he was hospitalized in the
I think we've talked
PICU
about that. We've talked about
for a week. I don't even want to know how expensive those medical bills were going to be, because they really had us freaking out. We thought we were going to lose this child because he literally could not
that.
breathe.
Did we get our $60,000 cup from that experience? I don't think.
I
we
don't
did.
think we did. No.
But yeah, and so it's like even like Texas Children's, they're awesome. That's
Oh,
another thing is that we
yeah.
have to go through Texas Children's with everything, which is fine because they're awesome.
Yeah, so they don't recognize us, but we recognize the nurses at Woodlands Texas Children's Medical Center, because we have spent many a nights there. The triage nurses, shout out to them at the Kingwood location. I don't know what they look like, but I know their voices because
Nurses
we
hotline.
are constantly calling
We
them.
call the nurses hotline of our Kingwood location. We call the nurses hotline for just Texas Children's.
Urgent Care knows us. Kingwood Urgent Care.
Man,
They know us probably because we're there.
It's great. And he's healthy now, but I mean, we went through
He
some
has
stuff,
been healthy,
and he just has allergies and he has asthma, and we're taking care of it, and we're doing what we need to do, which is great because all of that, like seeing a specialist, I don't want to know how much it was to take him to a pulmonologist.
Yeah.
Like he was 2 years old going to a pulmonologist, and it's like, so they do what they have to do to make sure the kid's healthy.
He also had a helmet.
He had a helmet.
That was super
They wanted to take him to a
expensive.
play therapist because he wouldn't stop biting kids, and finally he's grown out of that. But it's like to the extreme, right? Where most parents would be like, "Oh, they'll grow out of it." They're like, "No, we're going to take him. He's got to go to a play therapist. He's got to be a."
Stuff has to get like approved by the court. Well, a lot of it has to get approved by the court, like his helmet and stuff. So they're like, "Hey, this kid has a crooked head. He needs a helmet." And so there was even a little bit of a wait time on that, because that was a downside to that. Whereas like most parents would just go get this kid a helmet and pay out of pocket, whatever. But we had to wait for the court to say, "Hey, yeah, we're going to cover this charge." So he actually got his helmet a few months later than what he was supposed to
Which
get his
totally sucks. 'Cause
helmet.
It could have been so much more beneficial, and that's where the bureaucratic stuff really affects everything, because it's like out of pocket. We wanted to pay out of pocket and they wouldn't let us, and so it delayed his helmet by 6 months, which means he missed out on the most developmental beneficial stage of wearing one. And that it is what it is, and it's fine, and he has a little bit of a flat head, but
He's so cute.
he's still cute. Every diamond needs a little bit of a rough edge to give him some character. So that's what he
What?
is. So that's, we're up to date now with him, and that's kind of where we are, and we'll do what we can to continue to update you guys throughout this process. And yeah, I mean, like I said last episode, fostering is not for everybody, and to be honest, we weren't even sure if it was for us, and we're still not even sure if it's for us.
I think God's been slowly like working on our hearts. I don't know if we're still really meant to be foster parents, but I think through this process he has really, really changed our view and our hearts on just children in general. So it's been kind of a cool experience now that we're on the tail end of it and seeing it all.
Yeah, we're potentially talking about, bringing in a girl into the mix, and if God's willing to make that happen, then he'll make that happen too. And we're figuring out what's best for us. And yeah, so we appreciate all of those that have reached out to us. And if anybody hearing this that's new and doesn't know us and has questions, feel free to DM us on social media, leave us some questions there, and we'll do our best to answer them, and maybe we'll do some stories on Instagram. Please follow us on Instagram, just so we can know that there's people out there that are listening to us. It encourages us to keep doing this. We're not necessarily doing it to be, famous or whatever it is. I think we're just, it's a creative outlet for me, and something that like I said, there's a purpose for it. I think that is to come, and I want to build a platform to just shine light on everyday people's struggles. And it's not just about a podcast of, famous people are real too. That's what I feel like a lot of the big podcasts are, showing how famous people struggle too. But I just want to talk to everyday normal people and see how they keep going and what makes them go, and just take encouragement from each other. So connect with us on Instagram.
We're all in this together.
Genuinity.pod. Don't ask me to spell it. You'll figure it out. It's on our Spotify. So yeah, I appreciate that. We didn't talk about the Easter egg, so that's going to be an Easter egg for our next episode. We'll get into what's going on in Jess's life, and I don't know, I think maybe next episode will be about marriage and just our marriage and how fostering has been a struggle for us and how it's brought some things to light and what we're working on and what we're trying to fix. And we hit that 7-year itch like most couples that we didn't think it was real, and guess what?
It is.
It's real. It's real. And so
Dun, dun, dun.
yeah, make sure to tune in next week for Genuinity Pod episode 5. So.
Yeah, definitely shoot us questions. We are open to a Q&A. We really need some prompts as well. So that would help
us.
a lot.
We appreciate y'all. Thanks so much for listening. Tune in next week.
Bye.